Hi, I'm Katrina Webb, founder of New Day and your podcast host. In each episode, we'll speak with ambitious leaders from around the world who are creating meaningful change and inspiring leadership for the greater good. Their stories will spark your own leadership journey and offer practical tools to help you lead with purpose and impact. Hello and welcome to the New Day podcast, where we explore inspired leadership for the greater good. I'm Katrina Webb, and I'm so thrilled to introduce someone who brings joy, energy, and wisdom into every room he enters. My guest, a very dear and special friend, Robbo Robinson, who is an elite performance coach, former professional sprinter, and someone who's guided Olympians, Paralympians, executives, and business leaders to realize their potential. He's also just mentioned he's been working with couples as well, so I can't wait to explore that. Beyond the achievements of Robbo, he's known for his humility, for his gratitude, and what many may call his unbeatable mindset. I can't wait for you to hear his story and some of his practical daily routines and mindset shifts that he's going to share with us today. So let's dive in. Robbo, it's so fabulous to have you here with us.
Webby, I'm going to call you Webby. I can't stick with Katrina, but Webby, I'm super grateful to be here. I interviewed you on my podcast back in 2017, and to see you doing your podcast now really lights me up, because the impact you're already making without the podcast was huge. So I'm extremely honoured and grateful to be here today and provide a little bit of value and maybe some fun stories for your listeners.
Wow, it's great to have you here. And I can't believe it was 2017. I remember, I think it was one of your first episodes, and we recorded it in a hotel somewhere in interstate when we were traveling. And, kudos to you. That was a very successful podcast that you have delivered over many years.
Well, episode number one, you really kicked it off for us.
Now, Robbo, I want to mention that you are in my life every day. And at 2 p.m. every day, I get this beautiful alert that comes up on my phone. And it says to take 3 deep breaths and think of something that you're grateful for. And I think of you every day because we were presenting together some years ago, interstate, and you told me it was something that you did. And at that time, we actually put the alert in my phone. So every day at 2 o'clock, I have this beautiful message that reminds me to take 3 deep breaths and to think of something I'm grateful for. And I think of you because you were the one that really encouraged me to do that. What is funny, Robbo, is that every day it surprises me.
Well, I'm glad that I surprise you like that every day. Gratitude.
Isn't it funny though, as human beings, and you can see your fantastic logo there, and thinking about human potential, it's not easy to change human behavior. And I bring that story up because even though I know it's in my phone at 2 o'clock every day, it surprises me and it reminds me to do some of these simple but really important habits that I know you call 1%ers, which I can't wait to get into today. But developing habits does take time, and we need to have these little prompts around us to keep us on track, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I always say make it easy to win. If we set a big ambitious goal or a big habit that we want to change and we don't make it easy to win, then we are opening up the opportunity for us to not follow through with it. So the gratitude habit, I'm addicted to gratitude, and I would say that I'm an optimistic lover of life, and I'm addicted to gratitude. And before I had young kids, I wouldn't get out of bed until I expressed 3 things that I'm grateful for, and would find gratitude in amongst. I haven't always lived this way, but when I learned the power of gratitude and felt it myself, I really wanted to make it a habit. So that's what I did. I put it in my phone and to go off at that time every day. I think because you're in Adelaide, yours goes off at 2 and mine's at 2:30 p.m.
Yes.
We worked that out. So it goes off at the same time, and it says stop, pause, take 3 deep breaths and express gratitude for one thing right now. Even if I've already expressed gratitude for many things, it's just that little reminder. And the interesting thing is sometimes I'll look at that and say, I'll get to that later. And then I remember, I have a little laugh to myself and I say, hang on. I call myself Brett. Everyone else calls me Robbo, but I say, hang on, Brett, that's what it's there for. And once I anchor into it, I notice a shift in how I feel. So the science of gratitude is really powerful in that it changes our hormonal profile, and we start to lower our stress hormones and release more of our helpful, healthy, feel-good hormones. And when we feel gratitude, we release serotonin, which is a mood-boosting hormone. So it literally changes how we feel. And the interesting thing is that when someone else receives gratitude and they actually feel it and they do actually accept it and receive it, they too get a boost of serotonin, this mood boosting hormone. So gratitude is like this amazing medicine that I think has so much wisdom in itself and so much support that I really want to be tapping into it as much as I can.
Oh, I can't wait to explore that. And for the people that are listening or watching us, maybe take the moment to, whenever you can, to join us at 2 p.m. Adelaide Central Standard Time or Australian Central Standard Time, and you can join Brett and I at the same time of the day when we're getting that alert on our phones to remind us to take those 3 breaths and to think of something we're grateful for. And I love that, not to go, I'll do that later. Actually, maybe we need to do it now, because the benefit you're going to get right now is going to change the rest of your day.
Absolutely. And sometimes it's later. I might be coaching, or if it goes off maybe it will go off while we're chatting, actually, and we can do it, but we'll come back to it later. It's always there as a reminder.
Yeah. So, Robbo or Brett, as you said, let's go back to talking about, I love to share stories on our New Day podcast and looking at our New Day stories. And tell us who Brett is and where you grew up and where did your love of athletics, sport, helping others come from?
Well, I actually grew up and finished high school in a very rural country town in the middle of New South Wales. It's literally in the outback. And the name of that little country town in Aboriginal language actually means burnt earth. So the soil is rich red. Rivers and lakes are hundreds of kilometers away. It's dry, it's hot. In the middle of summer, it is literally like one of those old Western movies where the tumbleweeds blow down the street. It's like that. The name of the place is Cobar. And growing up out there, we had a lot of independence and lots of community sport. So I played a lot of sport. And at the end of year 12, I had an opportunity to either go to the Australian Institute of Sport as a sprinter, or I was also playing with the Parramatta Eels, the NRL team, the junior development squad. So I had them as an option. And I'm lucky to have them as an option. My grandfather took me under his wing in earlier years when I was sort of going off the rails a bit, and took me on as his athletics coach and allowed those opportunities to actually be there. And then I took the opportunity of being a sprinter at the AIS, and that's where I actually met you a couple of years later. So I went to the Institute of Sport and trained full-time as a sprinter. And I also studied full-time while I was there and became a soft tissue therapist, so sports massage and injury rehab. And what I learned, reflecting back on it now, I had a lot of talent as an athlete, but I just didn't have that hunger and desire to want to be the world's best. And so when I had an opportunity to travel with the Paralympic teams as a soft tissue therapist, for the first time I got this feel where I was still in around high performance sport and that vibe, you know what it's like, where people are dedicating their lives to be their best. And I was still in around all of that, and there was the travel, the adventure, the spirit, the connection, the human connection that you get. But I was a staff member. And so after that trip, I quote unquote took a break from my running and kept traveling with different Paralympic teams over the years, and never went back to the sport. And I think that goes to show how much of the talent was what really got me there, but I didn't have that hunger and desire. And then many years later, I got an opportunity to go back to the Institute of Sport and do essentially an apprenticeship as a high performance coach under the coach that you and I both had, arguably one of the world's best Paralympic coaches, Irina Dovoskina. She was my coach when I was an athlete, and yours as well. And then I went back to learn under her at the Institute of Sport and did my apprenticeship there, and then became a high performance coach, strength and conditioning, sprints and jumps coach, and working mostly with Paralympic and some Olympic athletes. And then that trajectory was really clear where I just loved it. Loved really working day in, day out, supporting athletes, supporting people to essentially be better versions of themselves. And it just so happened that the vehicle was sport for a lot of these people that I worked with, and loved the physical, the mental, the emotional challenges that people had to go through to actually be their best and realize their potential, and being a part of just one of the cogs that is turning in amongst all of that. And I actually wanted to be one of the world's best coaches. I still remember writing it down as a goal, and that's a bit abstract, but Irina was one of the world's best coaches, so I was underneath her. And then I started working with Dan Paff in America, who was one of the world's best able-bodied coaches, and I traveled to America and worked under him quite a bit. So it was really clear to me how to become world's best coach. That was going to take at least a decade, if not more, lots of time and commitment, but I could see that the trajectory that I could be on. And 2018, I was awarded Paralympic Coach of the Year, but in that same year, I actually decided to finish up from the sport. And a few years earlier, I'd experienced major adversity that just got me to think differently, changed my perspective on the world, did a lot of internal, deeper sort of work. And then, so for the last 8 years, I've chosen to step away from the full-time arena with athletes. And over the last 8 years, mostly been stepping into environments where I'm working with, like yourself, with leaders and ambitious people in the workforce and entrepreneurs. And you mentioned it there in the intro, but with couples as well, and really helping people to understand themselves better, creating clarity and conviction of who we are and what we stand for, and then supporting them to realize their potential in different domains of their life. And it really lights me up. One word that comes to mind in around this work is that it makes me feel like I'm thriving. And that's not just because of what I do for myself, but it gives me passion and enthusiasm for life, to see people lean into the challenge, to see people know there's a barrier, know there's some roadblocks, but be willing to do the work to actually create clarity and conviction of who they are at their best and what they stand for, and actually move through it as opposed to being held back from it. So I started off in sport, and I was addicted to human performance in high performance sport, became more addicted to human behavior, and understanding that human behavior actually leads to human performance. As humans, we're very simple beings sometimes, but we're also very complex. So I love it that there's no cookie cutter approach to support one person that's necessarily going to work for the next person.
Wow. And you can even feel your passion and love for what you're doing. Brett, a question for you, did you write, I want to be the world's best coach, or were you more specific? Did you write, I want to be the world's best Paralympic coach or sprint coach? What did you actually write down?
Yeah, it was track and field.
Yeah.
It was track and field. I was working in track and field. And then I remember years later, I actually crossed out track and field and just had coach. Because the more that I worked in strength and conditioning and speed dynamics, and I started to coach athletes and coach the coaches from different high performance teams, then I realized that I love track and field, but it was also limited to how I felt like I wanted to be. So being one of the world's best coaches, and meaning more so around the physical aspects. Later in life, learning, I still have a desire to be one of the world's best, but more in around the human behavioral elements rather than just the human performance.
I just love that, because sometimes we write these goals and we think they're specifically about track and field, but you're still, like, as someone that knows you well, you're still on that pathway to being one of the world's best coaches. And I often talk to people about when we get so fixed on the packaging of things, and then we don't meet our expectations, we feel like we may be, not on the right track. But even when I hear you say that, I go, wow, like, you had that dream and you're still on it. It's just so broad that you're now coaching people in so many different facets to be one of the world's best, to realize, their human potential. Because as you said, we are simple, but we can create so much suffering and complexity for us to have to get through or to let go of, to be able to realize our potential.
Well, interesting thing you say that about the expectations too. And what I've learned is that I have set high expectations in my life in many different areas and failed them, quote unquote failed them. I haven't got to them, but I haven't let that be the reason why I won't continue on a journey or choose something else that's co-aligned with that. So for example, with the podcast, I was inspired by Lewis Howes and the School of Greatness. I thought, if he can do it, I can do it. I'm going to monetize this through my value of impact. It was all about impact, and I'm going to be one of the world's best podcasters. doing it from my values first, but also that was a goal. That never happened. I didn't have the millions of downloads, but I also didn't feel like, oh, I didn't meet those expectations. It's a failure, quote unquote failure for those goals. I've started several businesses in the past that have not done so well, but it's led me to the next thing and the learning of the next thing and the next thing. So, expectation is a funny one where it can create a lot of pressure for us, and pressure is a privilege. It gives us an opportunity to lean in and to realize our potential. Without the pressure, we can become a bit complacent and a bit comfortable. So the pressure can be a good thing, but it can also trigger a lot of our disempowering emotions and disempowering beliefs. And you would have seen it, maybe you felt it in high performance sport and outside of sport, where that pressure has triggered anxiety or fear or overwhelm in people. And those disempowering emotions, they're completely normal. We don't try and avoid them, but those disempowering emotions can get the better of us instead of us getting the better of them. So pressure can go either way. And that's a big part of what I love working with humans, is that ability to be able to manage the pressure instead of the pressure managing us. And that pressure might be daily pressure. I've got a 4.5-year-old and a 6.5-year-old, and I love them dearly. That's part of my purpose, but it brings a bit of pressure in my life. So it's not just the big audacious goals. It can be the daily challenges, which I actually think is, the more that I do this work and work with humans, the more I realize it's actually about the daily being and the daily doing rather than the big audacious goals or the big visions that we have. They're important, but the ability to actually really connect into the day and really be present and really feel like we have, I don't want to say control, but this ability to meet the pressure on a daily basis, and this ability to maintain this level of kind of passion and enthusiasm for life. Like, all right, let's get after it. I can see the curveballs coming. I'm not feeling 100%. That's okay. I can still do this. So there's a little bit of self-belief that allows us to still move through the challenges that keep showing up.
Can we go deeper into this too, Robbo? Because, you've given us a little bit of insight then about staying present in the day, but speaking about expectations and anxiety and pressures, whether it is coming from the smaller things or from work performance or from sporting performance, with all the people that you've worked with, what's one of the tools that you've found really helpful as a starting point for people to practice to help reduce or not let those pressures disempower them?
Yeah, good question. And I know you only offered me one, but I'm going to be greedy and choose two because they coincide.
Of course you can.
And it makes sense because you use one to support the other. A key one is around actually internal dialogue. So the stories we tell ourselves are really loud, and they're the stories that we listen to the most. And the brain has this, what's called a negativity bias. And that means that we generally, our brains are designed to see threat, to feel uncomfortable or uncertainty and worry. It was designed evolutionary to keep us safe in cavemen and cavewomen days. But now it kind of just keeps us on high alert and in the stress cycle. And so what we can tend to do is have this internal dialogue and these repetitive stories, either subconsciously and we don't realize it, or consciously it's really front of mind. And the internal dialogue is generally, I'm not sure I have what it takes. I'm not good enough to be here. Everybody's judging me. I don't want to take a risk. Different things like that can be coming through that can actually be triggering those disempowering states or preventing us from really stepping into the life that we truly desire and deserve. So a skill set is around the awareness of our internal dialogue, acceptance. So I've got the AAA battery method is awareness. I'm aware of these stories and they're disempowering. Acceptance. I accept that I'm human and I have these disempowering stories. I accept that I'm human and I have disempowering beliefs. And then the last A is action. So awareness, acceptance, action. Action is, what am I going to do about it? And so when we really sit with it, are we going to allow those disempowering stories and that internal dialogue to actually stop us from living the life that we truly desire and deserve? Or are we going to take some little steps forward into helping us reframe that language in our mind. And that is a key aspect that I find working with people. I'm just going to say humans. It doesn't matter if they're athletes, business, entrepreneurs, stay-at-home parents, volunteers, whatever it is. As humans, we have this internal dialogue that can actually be limiting us. So the tools and strategies around that: awareness, acceptance, action. Action can be a mental reframe. So when we come up with those stories, here's an interesting thing. So most of these stories, not only with the negativity bias are they trying to keep us safe and they're disempowering or negative stories, most of them are on repeat from the day before unless we do something about it. So neuroscience shows that. But a lot of our belief systems, the disempowering beliefs, a lot of what's stopping us from moving forward that we might not realize is we've had a past experience in our life. And it's not the past experience that's holding us back. It's the meaning we're giving to that past experience. And this is something that I learned really well with being surrounded by massive stories of adversity every day, or people in the Paralympic world, and not just adversities, but people like yourself, Webby, that were born with a disability, and you just have the daily challenge. And talk about internal dialogue that can create to hold you back. Mm-hmm. So what I learned is that it's actually not about what happens in our life. It's the meaning we give to that experience that projects how we will think, feel, and behave afterwards. And so for some of us, and I've had these experiences where something's happened in life and I go into victim mentality, because that happened, life will never be great again. It can't be. This is the worst thing that's ever happened. And that victim mentality can keep us stuck. Or because I've had a failed relationship, I thought I would never find love again. And because I had failed in those businesses, I could have given the meaning that, well, that means I'm no good in business, I should just give up. But the meaning we give to it shapes how we think, feel, and behave. So we can't change the situation that happened, but we can change the meaning that we give to it. So a lot of the time we don't realize the internal dialogue and those disempowering stories can actually be related to a past experience from even when we were little kids. And we're giving the meaning to it that, well, I've always been that way, I can never change. Or that person treated me like that back then, and of course, people always judge me. That's what happened back then, and therefore I'll always be judged, whatever it might be. So the reframing of that, and sometimes it can be deep work, and I know that you do this kind of work as well, so it's not just a matter of, find it and reframe it and you'll be okay. It takes some time, but having that awareness now, you can't unknow what you know. So when you start to become aware that those stories, right, that's actually, that's what happened, and the meaning I'm giving to it is that I'm not good enough because of that. Mm-hmm. Can I change the situation that happened? No. Can I change the meaning that I give to it? Actually, I can. Yeah. And that can bring a sense of empowerment for us to start to shift that. So that's one around internal dialogue and meaning. And then in terms of tools and strategies, in answer to your question around bringing presence into the day and a sense of calmness amongst the chaos. And sometimes that chaos is the 5:30 p.m. with kids and emotions and food flying everywhere. And sometimes the chaos is the demands of work. And sometimes it's a mixture of everything. So one of the key tools that we take with us everywhere we go that we're generally not taught how to use very well is the breath. It's the first thing we do when we're born. It's the last thing we do before we die. And it's one of the things that we do most consistently every day of our lives, but we're often not taught how to do it efficiently. Don't get me wrong, we're breathing and we're alive, so that's pretty efficient, but efficiently in terms of calming our mind from that reactive part of the brain, coming back, bringing the other parts back online that support us to think clearly and make better decisions, allowing us to feel present, allowing us to shift how we feel internally in a hormonal shift, which then allows us to show up a little bit differently in those moments. And the breath, I'm not sure about you, Webby, but when I was an athlete, I was never taught how to breathe very well. No. When I was a therapist, I wasn't taught how to breathe or to teach other people how to breathe. When I was a high performance coach for 7.5 years in the system, arguably one of the strongest systems in the world in high performance sport in Australia, I was never taught how to breathe well myself or to teach my athletes how to breathe very well. And so it was the back end of my career, my athletes were struggling to catch their breath before they did another rep, and I thought, oh, they just need to breathe a bit better. I can see them second guessing themselves that they're not going to perform. And I realized I don't even know how to teach them how to breathe better. And that's when I reached out and found my mentor, who we're now collaborated with full time, Nam Baldwin, and really learned about the power of the breath and went down that avenue to really support all humans. I got addicted to it, saw how it benefited in sport, helped myself, and then how it can help all of us in so many areas of our life.
Oh gosh, there's so much wonderful goodness in there, and I've got so many more questions. You mentioned your mentor that you're working with now. Tell us about what you're doing, how you met him and their team, and the work that you're offering, that if people are listening, that they want to find out more about how to work with you and your team.
Yeah, so Nam, he's almost a decade and a half older than me, and I don't let him forget that, because he's very fit, he's extremely healthy, he's a wizard in this space. So when I heard about him, actually, it was one of the snowboard coaches at the Institute in Sydney, and he said, oh, I heard you're looking for a breathing coach, try this guy, he's worked with Mick Fanning and a lot of the surfers. And I said, oh, I don't need a surfing coach, I need someone who can teach my athletes how to breathe. And he said, just give him a go. When I got Nam in, I quickly realized, yes, he is an expert of the breath, and he connects everything holistically, how it supports us mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually. And that's when I realized there's way more to the breath than just recovering for a rep than what I thought, and started to really connect more with Nam. And once I finished up in high performance sport, I came and spent more time with Nam and learned from him. And then over the years, I would bring him into my programs and events, and he and his beautiful partner, Devon, coached me up in certain areas in their business at the time, and we were doing a lot of work together. And then 2 years ago, we collaborated full time and created HUPO, which is what you mentioned earlier, short for human potential. We exist to help people realize their potential. And a lot of the work that we do is in around the pillars that we've spoken about, and supporting people physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. And it's not about, yes, we work still with some of the world's best athletes, but it's not just about that. Most of the people that we work with are ambitious entrepreneurs, ambitious leaders in business, and people who are ambitious about just living their best life. We are a well-being and performance company, and everyone in life, regardless of what you're doing, there's an element of performance in our life. And, you know, we want to perform better as parents. We want to perform better in our daily lives. We want to perform better in our work. We want to perform better as athletes for those that are athletes. What we believe is that you can't separate well-being and performance. You can't perform at your best without having a focus on and a value around your well-being. So a lot of the work that we do is teaching. We have breath enhancement training, which is predominantly around the science of the breath, and then the practicality components of how to breathe well and how to stretch and strengthen your diaphragm and expand your lung capacity, and what all that means in terms of us extending our health span, not just our lifespan, but expanding our health span. So we have other programs with leaders, like a lot of the work that you do, where it is around helping them perform under pressure. We've got one program where we use a blend of neuroscience and virtual reality to help people understand what's going on in their brain and body when they experience pressure, and then knowing exactly what to do using techniques, one of them being the breath, to help them manage the pressure as opposed to the pressure managing them. And we do many other workshops and get people out into nature. We're all about the experience. There's nothing better. I see you shaking your head, and I know that you're about that too. And when I presented at New Day last year, it was the most unique and awesome environment that I've ever seen for a leadership day, where people could listen to us speak on stage, but then all the participants could go and jump on a jumping castle and kick footies around and play these different games and experience life, have a bit of fun and joy and some awe-inspiring experiences. So that's what we're really about at HUPO, to help it all land, not just sitting in a classroom learning from us, but also then being able to put things practically. You know, we do sauna and ice bath combos as a part of our emotional well-being. There's lots of different epic experiences that we'd like to take people through as well.
And we'll pop all of those details in our show notes for people to find out more about what you're doing. It is so fantastic. And just as I talk to you and see you light up about hearing some of your story and now seeing the transition that you're still able to help people. And you know, Brett, before when you were sharing your journey and you just said you didn't have that whole package as an athlete to have that real competitive desire to be the best in the world. Did you feel at that age, though, that even though that was missing, that you had a stronger desire to be of service to others? Can you relate that and have a feeling of that way back then? Or did that take a bit of time to go, okay, it wasn't?
Yeah, I'm going to be honest.
Yeah.
It took time. I think back then I was more of there's the shiny object, which is the opportunity, and that opportunity aligned with my value of high performance sport. It wasn't this desire to really, give back and support. It was probably 50-50, where this is also about me. I want to be the best therapist. I want to be the best coach, and I can help other people be the best versions of themselves too. And it wasn't probably until I did more of that and moved through life more where it's become so much more, and especially through certain phases of life where it's really about that giving back, and not just giving back your time and your knowledge, but supporting people and communities in different ways.
So do you think with the knowledge that you now have, if you could go back to you being an athlete at AIS and the tools that you've now learned and you're sharing, do you think you would have had the whole package back then?
To take, like the whole hindsight thing, to take what I know
Yeah.
now, I'm not sure how far I would have gone, but I can tell you right now that I would have pushed the boundaries of retirement to be one of the oldest sprinters that could be, because from what I know now and what I had there with that opportunity and the talent, the skill sets, the mindset, the determination, how to really funnel it, but also how to separate myself from not just being an athlete, but also who I am as a whole person, and really understanding that and having the goals there, but also splitting not just having that as my sole identity. But I have no doubt at all that you would have been kicking me out of the sport of, maybe it's time to go, Robbo. You've been here for a while and you did really well a few years ago. I would have been one of those athletes, because it's just that passion and desire to, wisdom is one of my core values, and it's one of the words in my personal philosophy is to embody wisdom every day. And so the more that I learn and the more that I absorb, and knowledge isn't wisdom, it's the application of all of that knowledge, and to actually do that consistently. Wisdom wasn't even a word that I probably heard it, but didn't even know what it meant back then. So even just that little bit alone, taking that back to that version, absolutely no doubt that I would have pushed the boundaries a lot more in the athletic pursuits.
I'd love to know, with all the athletes that you've worked with over many years, Paralympians, Olympians, and other athletes from different sports, tell us one of your favorite stories.
I thought you were going to ask me for a favorite athlete.
Well, favorite athlete, no, you could do both. You like to do more than one thing, go two.
A favorite story. It's hard to choose a favorite story, because there's so many, and this, Webby, being inside the Paralympic world, where it's definitely in the Paralympics where there's the favorite stories, because there's so much story of challenge and adversity and resilience and the inspiration, all tied into so many stories. But I think instead of choosing a favorite story, I've just got to relate it back to the elements that we can all take from those athlete stories and adversity, sorry. And it really comes back to, like what I was saying before, if someone said to me, just sum it up in a short sentence about what's the biggest takeaway from your time working with elite athletes, it would be what I was getting at before, that the way that athletes with a disability, most athletes with a disability, have had to use the power of their mind to overcome challenges and still maintain self-belief, persistence, resilience, determination in amongst everything else. The way that they've had to use their mind to get through all of that is undoubtedly one of the greatest assets and one of the greatest skills that we can all take. How do they think about their past experience? It's not about what happened to them. It's how they choose to respond. That's the critical factor. The meaning they've given to those past experiences isn't that life can never be great again. It's actually, I've heard several athletes say this, that were able-bodied and become disabled before becoming Paralympic athletes, is that if they could reverse time and change things and not have that accident, would they? And some of them, not all of them, but some of them say, no, my life is better because I almost lost my life. My life is better because I had that accident. And I accepted that for years until I realized, actually, that's not the truth. It's not better because of that accident. It's not better because you almost lost your life. It's better because you're choosing to see it that way.
Yeah.
Your life is better because you are choosing that life can be better on the other side, or because of that accident. So it all comes down to the way that we actually use our mind to think about situations in our life and to really connect deeply to who we are and what we stand for. And that, away from sport, I think, is values for all of us that aren't trying to be elite athletes anymore, or no desire. I've met people that don't care about sport. Okay, zero judgment, that's great. But the core values that we live by is that deep connection to who we are and what we stand for, that we can have meaning and purpose in our life to actually want to overcome those disempowering stories or the challenges that we've been through.
Yes. Brett, you've been an athlete without a disability and a very successful one, and then obviously you got to train with great athletes like me, but also travel and spend time with so many other Paralympians. You'll know where I'm going here, that what you've just shared with us, learning from Paralympians and their stories, could you ever imagine, with your story of having the setback, and you mentioned it earlier on about something happening to you along your journey that was very difficult, that you were able to pull from the strong mindsets of athletes with a disability to help you through a really difficult and tragic time in your life?
It's really interesting. I've thought about this often, and when you look back at your timeline, and it's not until a long time later you realize, that's why I had that experience in life, or that's why those people were in my life. I didn't realize it at the time, but that served a purpose later on. It helped shape different ways that I think, or it connected me to something else. So I never thought about it back then while I was heavily involved in Paralympic sport. It was just what I did and that was part of my purpose and, aligned with my goals. But it definitely, looking back at it, really now makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Are you happy to share with our listeners, some of the detail of that difficult time? Because one of the questions I had for you along your journey, particularly defining you as a leader, has there been moments in your career that have really brought some of your values to the forefront to take your work to another level? And are you happy to share, some of those difficult times that you've had that have really helped you? We hear a lot about post-traumatic stress disorder, but we don't hear a lot about post-traumatic growth, Robbo. And one of the things that I see in spades with you, and the reason why I'm keen to explore this more is how you've gone on to grow and pay that forward to thousands of people.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm more than happy to share, because it I think can support. I've heard stories similar, and when I hear people's stories and I'm surrounded by those stories, it really helps to inspire me to make change. And so I mentioned earlier that my grandfather supported me. I had the opportunity to go to the AIS as a sprinter or to play footy at the end of year 12. And those opportunities wouldn't have been there if it wasn't for my grandfather, because in year 7, I went away to boarding school. And at the end of that year, I was awarded Citizen of the Year, good kid. The following year, at the end of year 8, I was asked to leave for my 5th suspension, not so good kid. So drinking, fighting, other shenanigans. So when I went back to Cobar, let's say I was escorted back to Cobar by my parents, at the beginning of year 9, Cobar was a very strong rugby league community, and also a very strong beer drinking community. And I say that with respect, not from judgment. And I loved playing footy, rugby league, and I loved drinking beer, even from that ripe old age of 13. So my trajectory was pretty clear. And my grandfather took me under his wing and he said, every day after school, we're going to go down to the athletics track and we're going to train before any of your other sport. And every Saturday morning, this is your priority. He could see that I had potential, but I definitely wasn't realizing it was slipping away. So that's why, years of travel and him supporting me and taking me away to competitions, and so did my parents, but he was obviously in a different position to be able to support me more. And he became so much more than just my athletics coach and my grandfather. He became a mentor and an idol, and we traveled the country together, and really inspired by him and who he was. Really, he's madly in love with his wife too, and my grandmother, and they were happily married for 53 years and always cuddling and kissing. And he used to tell me things about their sex life that I didn't need to know, but it just proved that they were madly in love. Beautiful. He really taught me about love and respect from that perspective. And they were young grandparents. So as we got older, we traveled together and we would party a little bit together, and I did the city to surf with them, and they just became, they were like best friends, mentors, idols, grandparents, all wrapped into one. And 3 weeks before Christmas in 2014, I was over in America doing an internship, chasing that goal of being one of the world's best coaches, funded my own way over there to learn from the world's best. And I received a phone call 3 weeks before Christmas to let me know that my grandparents had been murdered in their own home by their own son, my uncle. And that news obviously just took me on a deep, dark, emotional journey and made me question life. And I experienced depressive states. I experienced anger, resentment mixed in with the heart-wrenching sadness that just I'd never experienced before. Here I was thinking that setting goals and doing the hard work, I know how life is going to pan out. And it just taught me in an instant that regardless of how planned we are, there is these major challenges in life that you can't plan for. But not having ever experienced these kind of emotional states before, I needed professional support. And luckily enough, I had a psychologist at the Institute of Sport that I went to see a few months later, or a couple of months later, and sharing the information with her, she said something to me that I'll never forget, and letting her know how much they meant to me. And she said, "Robbo, it sounds like part of your life has ended." I said, "Well, yeah, it feels that way." And this is the bit that I'll never forget. She said, "Do you know, Robbo, you're going to be more of a whole, stronger version of yourself because of this experience." And I thought about what she said in that moment, and I can still picture, I can still feel the sensations of sitting in her office actually. And I had my head in my hands and I thought about it. I can become a stronger, more whole version of myself because of this experience, And this is where, like what you were saying before, at the time, it didn't connect with the stories that I'd been surrounded by. But now I realize that that's why I was able to think that way in that moment. It made sense to me. It clicked. I can be a stronger, more whole version of myself because of this experience. And I looked up and I had tears rolling down my face. And I said, "Kate, that is the best thing that you could have ever said to me. Because every day I think about being a better version of myself, so I can also help the people around me be a bit better version of themselves. So if I have to think about this most effed up situation in my life in that way, then that's exactly how I'm going to think about it." And it just allowed me to start to think a bit differently. Instead of being victim to the circumstance, which I was, I then had choice. I would still feel anger, resentment, sadness, but instead of wallowing in it and feeling like I didn't have choice and being stuck in victim mentality, I learned how to process those emotions really well. And then I had choice. Where to from here? I could choose to go back to that, into the darkness, or I could choose something else. And that's where I started to learn about gratitude. I started to be grateful for the impact and the influence that my grandparents had in my life. I started to be grateful for the influence that they had in other people's lives. I realized that I wouldn't be where I was in that moment on that journey without them. Extreme gratitude. And the more gratitude I expressed, the better I felt. The better I felt and the more gratitude I expressed, the more things and people I found to be grateful for. And it was this spiraling into helping me feel and think better. And that was where I learned a lot about the mental reframes and the internal dialogue and really understanding human behavior in that process. And over those couple of years is feeling that transformation for me to go from the depressive states and the deep darkness that I went through to thriving again after those crappy experiences in life. That's when I realized, imagine if I could help other people through that shift as well. And I was already doing it in Paralympic sport, but I just connected and chose this deeper purpose to enhance and optimize my grandparents' legacy by impacting the lives of hundreds of thousands of people. And that's why I chose to step away from sport when I was awarded Coach of the Year, was because I had this deep sense of purpose that I really wanted to serve in around an addiction for human behavior, not just human performance. So through the journey myself and experiencing the shift, I wanted to support other people, not just from adversity, but like I said earlier, the daily challenges of how we can shift how we think, feel, and therefore behave, and therefore how we experience life. And just going back to how you pre-framed this, but it's only this year where I've looked back at my time with the Paralympians and how I speak about it and realized, of course, I was working with people that had that mindset, because it was preparing me for an experience in life where I had to tap into that mindset. I didn't have to, actually, because I didn't for a while, but I had the opportunity to tap into that. And so I can't change the situation, but I can change the meaning of that situation. Before, early days, it meant life can never be great again. Life's not fair. It doesn't matter how well we prepare, life just isn't fair. To now being the reason why I can actually have more of an impact, the reason why I can be more present with my children, the reason why I can realize my potential. The meaning of that experience is that it happened for me, not to me. And that's only my chosen meaning. Other people have experienced that same experience and don't have the same meaning. So there's no right or wrong. It's just how we choose to give that. And because of that meaning, that gives me that fuel, that passion and zest and enthusiasm for life to support other people to step into and realize their potential.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing, and thank you so much for choosing, and not only for yourself, Robbo, but choosing to pay it forward. Because one of the things I've learned on my journey of working in this space as well is you pay forward whether you like it or not. If you take good care of yourself and have these great practices in place, you pay forward that to people that you spend time with, whether you like it or not. And it's a good thing. But if you also do the opposite, you also pay that forward. And not only have you done it for your own healing, but you've gone on to become this incredible human being with lived experience and expertise to strengthen your impact and work. And I just wanted to say a huge thank you. I also wanted to say that as we were doing this podcast together and knowing each other for over 20 years, I'm not sure how long it is now, that thought only come to me today about that, joining that dot between spending time from learning from Paralympians to your own experience. So we're obviously joining the dots at the same time along your journey.
Interesting.
Robbo, I heard you mention the work that you're doing at the moment, the 4 areas: mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual. And I was so excited for you to have that 4th domain. What does it mean to you, even after, sharing a lot of your story today and what you've been through? What does it mean to you? How do you practice it? And also, how do you talk about it in the work that you do now?
Yeah, great question. And this is something that I have been through in waves. And I just want to preface by saying some people right now might be tuning out and don't know much about, or don't care much about, the spiritual side. And that was me in a previous version of myself. But one thing I will say is that what I've also learned is whatever you call it, it's a belief, right? It's a belief around this spiritual health. But what, from my experience, is that experience that I just shared took me on a journey that actually connected me to that spiritual sense that I had never really tapped into before. And so the way that I was connected to it then was just through deep inquiry and really understanding myself. And then also using the breath and meditation to actually go deeper and realize, there's something else happening in my existence that I don't control and I don't need to control, but there's something else. There's like an energy source that supports me to do what I do. And it's interesting because I went on that journey and became very spiritually connected, and then not because of kids, but with kids and just moving through the busyness of life and experiencing a lot more hardship and just moving through the grind a little bit over the few years ago, I kind of lost touch with that part of myself. And only just recently at the couples retreat, we did a cacao ceremony. A beautiful woman, Ali, who's a mother of 4 boys and very connected to herself and loving relationship with her husband and really inspiring, gentle human soul. And she took us through this cacao ceremony, and I reconnected with it. I had tears rolling down my face again and realized, oh my God, I am actually disconnected, not from myself, not from my values, not from my beautiful wife who was sitting beside me, not from the children that I love so much. I feel so connected to them and myself. But I realized I hadn't connected back to what I would call the source. And the reason why that experience reminded me of it, because just in that cacao ceremony, I felt something that I haven't felt for a long time. I felt this energy and this unwavering kind of support and this deeper connection that you can't connect to when I'm in the busyness of my head and in the busyness of life and just hoping or talking about being spiritually connected. It's a feeling. And so it's interesting where when I work with people who aren't very spiritually connected, I don't say, okay, we're going to work on your spiritual health right now. It becomes a byproduct of an energy where we do the work to work on the challenges that they have in their life. And it just so happens with deep inquiry and the breathing and sometimes meditation processes that they feel something different. And they're like, hang on, there's something else going on here. What is it? And that's where you realize that we are, as human beings, we don't have energy. We generate energy through our behaviors and choices and decisions that we make. And that energy source, or we destroy our energy through poor habits and behaviors, decisions that we make. But there's something else that's connecting us deeper, I believe, through this energy source. And so when we have the curiosity, I believe curiosity is such a great mindset to have, and an open mind to life and living life, we can explore some different simple processes of understanding ourselves a little bit better. And as we start to peel back the layers, and for me, it empowers me where I realize this is what came up for me just last week. I love that this has come up in the podcast, but I spend so much time and my passion and enthusiasm about focusing on and thinking about who I am and what I stand for. But I'd lost touch of how I am here and how it's all connected. And so just bringing that piece back into it, I feel so, light is a great word. I feel so whole and light, where now when I'm thinking about who I am and what I stand for, there's just that remembrance of, and everything's going to be okay. Because I've got this other energy source that I just need to keep tapping into to make me feel like I'm more connected and everything's going to be okay.
Wow. Wow, the timing of your retreat and these learnings is unreal. In fact, Robbo, I'm similar to you along my spiritual journey, and I think for many people I find they think it equals religion, and that's where people go, but I'm not religious and I'm not spiritual, and it turns people off. And visiting Nepal, I've been 17 times over the last 11 years. I've found my literacy around spirituality, and I wrote a blog that you can find on the New Day website called The S Word, and why spirituality is so much needed in leadership today. And it talks about lots of different things that that you can do to tap into that source, that spirit. And 2 of those things are things that you actually do as an organization, taking people out into nature, the power of the breath, being present, that's all part of our spiritual health. And it's interesting too, when you find in times of difficulty or grief or tragedy, that's where a lot of people tend to want to go to for the healing. And it can be an incredible part for people to really transform.
Yeah, it's like that knowingness, isn't it? When
Yeah.
you're deeply challenged and feel like I did, hopeless and lose belief that there's just this pull towards, well, there's got to be something else that can support us. And don't get me wrong, not everyone goes there, but those that I've seen and supported, and my experience of it is that it can be one of the pieces of the puzzle that can be missing until we actually really tap into it.
Absolutely. So, Brett, Robbo Robinson, as we come to a wrap of this beautiful discussion that we've had today, I'd love for you to leave our listeners with something that maybe you haven't mentioned today, or something that you have mentioned, that if there's one thing that people could, and I keep saying one, and if you want to add two, that's okay. But to think about, what's something. I know you talk about one percenters, and what are one percenters, and what's a challenge you could set for people that are listening right now that have really loved what you've shared and want a small action that they can take away?
Wow. So here's something that comes up for me. Something that most people don't talk about is the reason why we don't live the life that we truly desire and deserve isn't because we're not capable. It's often because we consistently break these tiny little promises to ourselves on a regular basis. And those tiny little promises aren't the ones that other people hear or know about. It's like those daily little things of, I'll stop scrolling and go to bed earlier. I'll spend more time with the kids this week, I promise. I'll look after myself when it's not so busy, I promise. And then we don't. And so those little moments of this erosion of self-trust starts to happen when we break those little promises. And the accumulation of that leads to this kind of lack of self-trust and self-belief, not necessarily in a big way, but just in small little ways. And so something that I'm really big on is supporting people to create these little vows. And a vow might be something like, this week, I'm going to go to bed 10 minutes earlier each night. Or this week, I'm actually going to get up when the alarm goes off, even if I don't go for that walk. Or this week, I'm actually going to put the phone away and spend that time with the kids just this week. And I'm going to make that vow and I'm going to stick to it for that week. And that's like the little one percenters, and just doing those little things consistently is what adds up to the bigger change, because we start to feel this empowerment, feel this belief. I've been through many challenges in my life where I've had to stop and then make vows to myself and just stick to these little promises to give me momentum again. And when we feel that momentum, things start to, momentum creates momentum. And so the little one percenters in around our mental well-being, in around our physical health, in around the hydration and nutrition, in around social connectedness, whatever it might be, really make it so easy to win that you don't even have to go for that exercise. You've just got to get up when the alarm goes off, if that's one of your bad habits, for example. Just make it easy to win consistently and start to, once the momentum comes, the version of us before the momentum is different to the version of us when the momentum is there. So we can't try and make decisions from the future version. We've just got to do it from now. So choosing little habit changes that are really easy to win, make it so easy to win that you create that momentum. And choose it in areas where you've been breaking those little promises to yourself. You will feel different, you will think different, and therefore you will act and behave a little bit differently. 3 things in life that we can't avoid: pain, uncertainty, and hard work. I've experienced deep emotional pain. There's been moments in my life that have so much uncertainty, and every single day there is so much uncertainty in this fast changing world. And hard work seems to be And hard work doesn't have to be grind, hustle, burn myself out, but it's choosing the spiritual connectedness. It could be the hard work. Lean in and do the things that we know we need to do that allow us to actually change the situations or change how we're thinking and feeling about things. So don't let the pain and the uncertainty be the reasons that we don't lean in. And hard work is a requirement for us to live the life that we truly desire and deserve. So I know you said one, maybe a few, and there was a few different questions in there, but just to wrap it up, if people can think about a vow that you can make to yourself in around some little habit changes that you know you need to change, and you know what they are. You don't need to say it, but as you're listening to this, you know what they are. I'm even thinking of a couple in my mind as we speak. Then we consistently stick to those and we feel the momentum. And that's how we make the change that we really want to change.
Oh, what a way to finish. And if you want to join us, get your phone out. And because Robbo did this for me and I love it, it's been there for years, at 2 p.m. Australian Central Standard Time, put a little alert in your phone that says, take 3 deep breaths and think of something that you're grateful for. And if you do that at that same time, we'll be doing it all together. And what a powerful thing that not only are we thinking about ourselves, but we can think of you, Robbo, of all the wisdom that you've shared with us. We can be grateful and we can share that gratitude together at the same time, which is pretty awesome.
I love it. I love it.
So, Robbo, thank you so much. Thank you for, oh God, where do I start? Your openness, your curiosity, your love of learning, your ability to find wisdom, or let's say, firstly, find knowledge and apply it, which is what we'll call wisdom. Thank you so much for your courage to do the hard work, to find that source and truth and that transformation out of such difficulty for yourself, but learning from others as well to bring your best human potential. But not only for yourself, you've found an incredible way to share that knowledge. And that's what we love to showcase at New Day stories of people that inspire leadership for the greater good, not only of themselves, but for others and the planet. And you're certainly a New Day leader. We loved having you live on stage last year in person at our summit, and it's been an absolute pleasure having you on our podcast today.
Thank you, Webby. It's a real honour. Honestly, it is. Your kind words are definitely received, and I want to reciprocate that and throw it right back at you on behalf of all the listeners too, I'm sure. But thank you for everything that you do and the impact that you're making and the place that comes from. I'm constantly inspired by who you consistently show up as and the impact that you make. So keep shining that light bright to the world, please. It's very inspiring.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to the New Day podcast. For more inspiration and tools to lead for the greater good, visit newday.world. Keep leading with purpose, and we'll see you next time.